Okay, so I have now another update with my continuous glucose monitor. I've now got a complete waking day from yesterday, which was Monday, the 8th of June, and I've got another overnight curve. So let's just have a look at the curve, first of all, for the whole of yesterday. So the horizontal scale here starts at 6 a.m., 6:15 a.m., and goes right through till 10:30 in the evening when I went to bed. Um, Fairly steady, just to put the vertical scale in context. This horizontal line here, it's 90 millimoles per liter, milligrams per deciliter, which is the more traditionally used in American scale, and that corresponds to 5 millimoles per liter, as we might use it in on the scale in the UK. And this line here, 105, is under six, probably about 5.9, I think, on the millimole per litre scale. So we're looking at a band roughly between 5 and 6 on the millimole per litre scale. And as I said to you yesterday, I'm sort of making some assumptions about calibrating this because I'm trying to bring it in line with the blood prick tests when I do them. I've done a couple again today just to calibrate it. So the key thing is perhaps not worrying too much about the vertical position of the curves. It's all staying fairly controlled, other than a dip just before I went to bed. I stayed within 1 unit of the millimole per litre scale, between 5 and 6. I had a natural rise in the blood sugar. Of course, this is interstitial glucose that it's measuring, but we're using it as a proxy for blood sugar. So there's a rise of that, which I'm seeing as a regular pattern now. I think I've seen that was the first morning's data. I've seen it again in this morning's data. My sugar level naturally rises just as I wake up, which is probably to do with cortisol levels. I had a coffee with cream, which is my little habit. Seemed to rise it, cause a little bit of a raise. There is obviously a little bit of sugar in cream, but not a great deal. So that might have been just a natural raise of my sugar levels. Then it was fairly steady during the morning. I didn't have any snacks or anything. And my first meal, you can see my blood sugar was starting to come down, so I was probably beginning to feel hungry. I took a day yesterday of eating when I was hungry. I had a purely protein and fat meal. I had some meat to use up. I had a venison steak, a ground beef patty, some cream, and there was something else. It was all protein and fat, and you can see that caused a little bit of response. The protein has an insulinemic response, so therefore there might be a bit of a blood sugar response from that. But again, not huge. Bearing in mind that this is between these two horizontal lines on the graph is only 1 unit on the millimole per liter scale. Um, and then once that had happened, it was fairly settled after that. I had mid-afternoon, you can see my sugar was coming down a little bit, so I had another meal here, which was just a bowl of strawberries, pecans, sunflower seeds, and cream. That caused, again, a moderate, bearing in mind the strawberries obviously got some sugar in them, and there is some sugar in the nuts, just a very moderate curve response. Taught a Pilates class. During the hour of the Pilates class, my blood sugar did something interesting. It went up a little bit. Actually, the highest, no, not quite, but certainly on a par with being the highest of the day. But by the end of the class, it dropped, and I did a reading at the beginning and a reading at the end. It had come down about half a unit on the millimole per litre scale. I then went for a walk. I wanted to get some fresh air, and my blood sugar came right down. The lowest it had been all day. And when I got home, I just have a little cube of cheese. I was obviously ready for something, so I didn't eat a lot that day. I had a little cube of cheese, a bowl of strawberries, pecans, and the seeds with some cream, and the protein meal. And actually, there was another coffee here. Around about here, there was another. I didn't mark it on the graph. There was another coffee with cream, so that might have been part of that little rise there. So maybe coffee with cream does seem to raise my blood sugar a little bit. But I didn't have a great deal of food that day, but I wasn't hungry. This is the whole point about being on the diet that I am. I'm eating to satiation, but not beyond, and not eating when I'm not hungry. And that was a day where I followed that pattern. So that seemed to work very well. So that was the curve from yesterday, during the daylight hours of yesterday. I think I've got to stop the share and then change the share to look at the other screen. So now I want the graph from overnight, which is that one. There we go. That's the curve I wanted. So hopefully that's the curve you're seeing. And this is the overnight curve. So horizontal axis starts at 10:30 in the evening last night, goes through the night, waking up here at 6 a.m. again. And then I've got the first events of today. Fairly steady through the night. This is a slightly different scale. This point here, where my arrow is 3 on the millimole per litre scale. It's 60, or just about 3, just slightly over 3. So there was a little bit of a dip, but it wasn't as significant as the night before. Didn't wake up, had a good night's sleep. all fairly controlled. So this is 5, this horizontal line is 5, that one is 3. So it's just naturally dipping between 3 and 5 while I'm sleeping. There's this natural rise in my glucose level as I wake up. So there's no food involved here. This must be just to do with my cortisol. It's a bit more pronounced this morning than it was yesterday. Coffee with cream today didn't really seem to cause any rise because I was on a downward trend, and maybe it's slightly altered the downward trend, but not by much. Had a cheese omelette before teaching Pilates this morning, and very gradual rise, but that was probably a little later, probably not to do with the cheese omelette, probably because I was giving exercise. I was teaching here at 9:30 where my cursor is now. So fairly steady in response to the cheese omelette, very little response or maybe no response from the coffee with cream this morning. Quite a strong natural cortisol rise of my glucose as I wake up, and a fairly steady night during the night. So that's my latest update with the glucose monitor. I'm going to start experimenting. So I'm still eating food, and probably today I've still eaten food that I would normally have eaten. I'm now going to have some strawberries without any nuts or seeds, just strawberries and cream, and see whether the nuts and the seeds make any difference, which is what I had yesterday, see whether that makes any difference to the sugar response curve. And I'm going to start experimenting with my food a little bit more as we go through the week. So watch this space and we'll see what happens. Okay, see you soon.